No, actually, I haven't.
I have. I've kicked radios, too. One all the way across the room, put my foot through it. Anyway, so then you seem qualified in most every way, as much as one could be qualified for that. So here you come to S4, and were you immediately led into this area where these craft were?
No, absolutely not. In fact, the first day there, I went in, and I think my first stop was to go to the medical office there. I believe there was a nurse in there. I'm pretty sure that was my first stop, and I had to go through a series of what I was told were allergen tests.
Allergen tests?
Yeah. They took my arm and drew a little graph on it and pricked each little area in my arm with different little needles.
No kidding.
And, in fact, I was not permitted back to work, I think, for 2 weeks until there was a reaction, or if there was to be a reaction, with any of the substances they put on my skin. And they said, we're working with some extremely exotic materials here that we're not all that familiar with, and we want to know if there's going to be any problem with it. And I said, well, that's, again, odd, but acceptable. And I was also given an injection there too, which was a wide spectrum. What did they call it?
Antibiotic?
No, it wasn't a wide spectrum antibiotic. It was a wide spectrum something or other.
It's always good to know what they're shooting you with.
Yeah. I thought. Now, I mean, there have been so many. I'm sure, which we'll get into later, so many ridiculous stories, offshoots of what actually had happened to me. People said, oh, well, they injected you with Thorazine or so on, or this was the memory drug that wiped out your memory so you could only remember back and forth, and, so on and so forth. But I'm pretty sure that wasn't the case. This was, they were mainly concerned about the, here you're dealing with actual extraterrestrial materials. And if we're going to be crawling around on them, taking things apart and having contact with them, they imagine they want to make sure that the people working on it are fairly safe. Well, that in one hand weighed against the fact that, don't forget the United States government fed fallout to people from time to time.
You bet.
And, did other strange things to them. But when
you originally told your story, Bob, years ago, that wasn't known. Hazel O'Leary was not around yet, and everybody regarded your story as absolutely incredible, beyond belief. But then when Hazel O'Leary stepped out and said the following occurred, everybody went into kind of a stupor and said, my God, we did that? So your story isn't so out of line.
Well, a lot has actually changed in the past 10 years. If you remember, 10 years ago, too, the predominant theory about how gravity propagates in any physics textbook, related to gravitons. Mm-hmm. And now the predominant theory is gravitational waves, which is exactly how some of, and some scientists and physicists at that time, pointed out one of the many reasons they say the reason this story can't be true was that this was absolutely ridiculous, so on and so forth. And now it's spoken of as a matter of fact. This is how gravity propagates through space. And it's just interesting to see how things slowly, over the span of a decade, quietly change. And that's one thing I do keep an eye on.
Yes.
But
and I take it your arm didn't break out inappropriately, so you passed.
No, I think it did develop a small eruption somewhere, but it was nothing to be concerned about, or so I was told. So we just proceeded from there.
As you know, there is a group of people suing the government over illnesses they have suffered from work they did at Area 51, and that is proceeding quietly in court. It's not going to be so quiet when it goes to trial, but that's underway now. So, indeed, there are some pretty exotic materials up there.
Actually, you just reminded me of something. When was that, Gene? When, was it right after that where I collapsed from the kidney?
Oh.
You remember that? And,
right.
And was that there or after I had left the project.
No, you were still in the project.
That was right after that.
Right after they did these tests and gave him a shot.
You know, it's kind of surprising. I forget that.
Drank a strange substance, and
all I remember is that you were at a Toyota dealer or something like that,
and he was in such pain. His kidneys hurt so bad he thought he was going to die. And to that point, Bob had never had any health problems or had never had any sedatives or painkillers, and the doctor gave Bob a shot of Demerol. And I called him, and he was floating on cloud nine. It wasn't even coherent, and I came to his house to see what was wrong. And then he was literally high from a painkiller they gave him just so he could stand the pain in his kidneys. So whatever went through his system certainly stuck there.
Yeah, so there was an adverse reaction to something.
Do you think that was, well, of course you have no way of knowing whether it was the allergy test they put you through or the shot they gave you?
Or was it an amazing coincidence that,
but he had no prior kidney problem.
Yeah, I mean, it is,
Well, I take it you went to the doctor.
I did, yeah.
What did he say?
I don't remember. I think he said he gave me a shot of painkiller, Demerol, I believe it was, and he took a urine sample, a blood test, and he asked if I had any previous problems, anything strange, and obviously I said no. Certainly didn't mention anything about getting an injection.
Right.
At a strange place in the middle of the desert.
Right.
Didn't they do X-rays or a CAT scan or something and find
not a CAT scan. They did
they
did just an X-ray to see if there was any blockage. But
there was nothing.
A day later, or I think even the next morning, everything was fine. The X-rays came back negative, and I believe the blood work came back negative too, as did the urine sample. So, in fact, I think his conclusion was that perhaps I had passed a small stone, and wound up in my bladder, and then it would probably hurt coming out again. But that never occurred, and whether or not that scenario is correct, again, is just speculation. But I don't know, that you just stirred that up in my memory. I don't think I've even mentioned that since it.
That's right. That's how little bits and pieces come back. How's your health now, by the way, and since then? Okay.
Oh, fine, no problem.
All right. So anyway, you pass all their little tests.
Pass all that. The next thing to happen was that I was led into a room with quite a number of little briefing packages, briefing papers, or these range from 2 pages to about 5 pages, little folders with different aspects of the project that I was working on. This was, I believe, the part of the first day and the second day that I was working there.
So they just sat you down at a table and had you begin to read about...
Yeah, what these were just basic overviews of what each group was doing, just essentially to give you knowledge of what the other facets of the project were about.
A general overall knowledge.
Right, had no specifics whatsoever, but if in, for instance, there was a group with metallurgy, so on and so forth.
All right.
And also contained some of the names of the projects.
Oh, it did?
Yeah.
All right. That's a good place to break, so relax. We'll be back shortly. The story you're hearing is a remarkable one, and we're beginning to hear new details because Bob's remembering new details. Bob Lazar and Gene Huff are my guests. The subject, Area 51, more specifically Area S4, where, as you will hear shortly, extraterrestrial craft were back-engineered. Yes, that's what Bob did. I'm Art Bell, and this is Coast to Coast AM.